You're embarrassing, Dad. She served me an ultimatum and packed to leave. Then one click exposed a fortune and a plan that would shock her to the core.
The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. You're useless, Dad. Completely useless. My own daughter, standing in my kitchen, her face twisted with the kind of contempt I'd never seen before. 24 years old, fresh out of college with her marketing degree, and apparently an expert on everything I'd done wrong with my life. I stood there holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching the woman I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, tear apart everything I'd built. But here's what she didn't know, what nobody in my family knew. While they were busy writing me off as a failure, I'd been quietly building something that would change everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The morning started like any other Tuesday. I was reading the financial section of the newspaper, something I'd done religiously for 37 years, when Emma walked into my kitchen. She'd been staying with me for 3 months since graduating, supposedly saving money for her own place. What she'd actually been doing was treating my house like a free hotel while she figured out her life. "Dad, we need to talk," she announced, dropping into the chair across from me with that heavy sigh she'd perfected in her teenage years. I folded my newspaper carefully, the way my father had taught me to respect the things that mattered. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" "This." She gestured around the modest kitchen, her designer handbag, the one I'd helped pay for as a graduation gift, sitting on the table between us. "This whole situation, it's not working." I waited. 37 years of marriage had taught me when to listen and when to speak. Emma was building up to something, and interrupting would only make it worse. "I've been thinking about my future, about what I want my life to look like." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like apartment listings. "My friends are all getting their own places, starting their careers, building something real. And I'm here, living with my dad who—" She trailed off, but I could see it in her eyes. The disappointment, the embarrassment, the way she'd learned to look at me over the years, like I was something to be pitied rather than respected. "Who what, Emma?" My voice stayed level, calm. It was a skill I developed over decades of dealing with difficult situations. "Who works at the same dead-end job he's had since I was born? Who drives a 15-year-old Honda? Who clips coupons and shops at discount stores like we're poor?" Her voice was rising now, years of frustration spilling out. "Do you know how embarrassing it is to tell people what my father does for a living?" I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "And what exactly do I do for a living, Emma?" "You're a clerk, Dad. A glorified clerk at some insurance company that nobody's ever heard of. You sit in a cubicle all day, processing paperwork for people who actually matter." The words came out like poison she'd been holding in for years. "My friend Jessica's dad owns 3 restaurants. Madison's father is a surgeon. Even Kyle's dad, who I thought was boring, turns out to be some big shot lawyer." "I see." I nodded slowly, processing not just what she was saying, but how she was saying it. This wasn't teenage rebellion or post-graduation anxiety. This was genuine shame. Shame about me, about the life I'd provided, about the man who'd raised her. "And it's not just the job, Dad. It's everything. This house hasn't been updated since the 90s. Your clothes look like they came from a garage sale. You drive that embarrassing car. You use those ancient flip phones. You act like spending money on anything nice is some kind of crime." She was on a roll now, 24 years of judgments pouring out like water through a broken dam. "When I bring friends over, I have to apologize for everything. The furniture, the decorations, the way you dress. Do you know what it's like to be ashamed of your own father?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to burn. I looked at this young woman, this person I'd worked double shifts to put through college, whose student loans I'd co-signed, whose car insurance I still paid, whose credit card bills I'd covered more times than I could count. "Tell me something, Emma," I said finally. "What exactly would make you proud of me?" She blinked, apparently not expecting the question. "I don't know. Something. Anything. Some sign that you have ambition, that you want more out of life than just existing paycheck to paycheck." "Paycheck to paycheck," I repeated slowly. "Yes, Dad, that's exactly what this is. You live like someone who's given up, like someone who's accepted that this is as good as life gets." She gestured around the kitchen again, taking in the older appliances, the simple furniture, the lack of luxury that seemed to offend her so deeply. "And you know what the worst part is? I'm starting to turn out just like you." I'm 24 years old, living at home with no clear direction and no real prospects. I'm becoming the same kind of failure you are. There it was, the word that cut deeper than all the others combined: failure. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after 43 years of what Emma apparently considered a wasted life. I walked to the window that looked out over the small backyard where I'd taught her to ride a bike, where we'd had barbecues every 4th of July, where she'd played with the neighborhood kids while I worked in the garden every weekend. You think I'm a failure? I said, not really a question. I think you've settled, Dad. I think you stopped trying somewhere along the way, and now you're content to just drift through life without making any real impact on anything or anyone. I turned back to face her, this young woman who looked so much like her mother it sometimes took my breath away. Sarah had been gone for 8 years now, cancer taking her just 2 months after Emma's 16th birthday. I wondered what Sarah would think of this conversation, of the daughter we'd raised together, of the judgments being passed in the kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals as a family. So what exactly are you proposing? I asked. I'm moving out. I found a place with 2 roommates. It's expensive, but I'd rather struggle on my own than stay here and watch you waste away in mediocrity. She pulled out a piece of paper, carefully folded, and placed it on the table. This is what I owe you for rent and expenses. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. But I can't stay here anymore. I can't enable this lifestyle of yours where nothing ever changes and nothing ever gets better. I looked down at the paper without picking it up. Numbers written in her careful handwriting, calculations of what she thought our relationship was worth in dollars and cents. Emma, I said quietly, before you make any final decisions, I need to show you something. Dad, there's nothing you can show me that's going to change my mind. I've made my decision. I need to build a life I can be proud of, with people I can respect. The words hit their mark perfectly. People she could respect, not including me. Humor your old man for 5 minutes, I said. 5 minutes. And then you can leave with a clear conscience, knowing you gave me every chance to prove I'm not the complete disappointment you think I am. She checked her phone, probably calculating how much time she could spare for her failure of a father. 5 minutes. I walked to my small home office, Emma following reluctantly behind me. The room was exactly what she expected. A cheap desk from some furniture warehouse, an old computer that took forever to boot up, filing cabinets that had seen better decades. Everything about the space screamed ordinary, forgettable, the kind of life that left no mark on the world. But it was what was inside those filing cabinets that would change everything. I sat down at the computer and waited for it to wake up, Emma standing behind me with her arms crossed, probably composing the speech she'd give her friends about finally confronting her loser father. The screen flickered to life, and I navigated to a website she'd never seen me use before. What is this? She asked, leaning closer despite herself. This is my Charles Schwab account, I said simply, typing in my username and password. The page loaded, and Emma's arms slowly uncrossed as the numbers came into focus. Account balance, portfolio value, recent transactions, dividend payments, capital gains. Numbers that didn't match anything she thought she knew about my life. I don't understand, she whispered, staring at the screen. I opened another browser tab, then another. Fidelity, Vanguard, E-Trade. Each account showing similar numbers, similar success, similar proof that everything Emma thought she knew about her father was wrong. Dad, what is this? How do you have this much money? I turned in my chair to face her, seeing her expression change from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been fear. Fear that she'd made a terrible mistake. Fear that she'd completely misjudged the man who'd raised her. This, Emma, is what 37 years of living below your means looks like. This is what happens when you invest wisely instead of spending foolishly. This is what compound interest can do when you start early and stay consistent. Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to speak, but couldn't find words. Every dollar you thought I was too cheap to spend, every purchase you thought I was too afraid to make, every upgrade you thought I was too poor to afford, I invested instead. While your friends' fathers were buying expensive cars and taking lavish vacations, I was building something that would last. I clicked through the portfolio holdings, showing her decades of careful stock selections, mutual fund investments, dividend reinvestments, Apple shares bought in 2003, Google stock purchased at the IPO, Amazon when everyone thought it was just an online bookstore, Microsoft, Tesla, Netflix, companies she used every day without realizing her father had been betting on their success for years. But why? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why live like this when you have so much? Because having money and spending money are two different things, Emma. Because wealth isn't what you show off, it's what you build quietly over time. Because I learned a long time ago that the people who look rich often aren't, and the people who are rich often don't look it. I stood up and opened one of the filing cabinets, pulling out folders thick with documentation. Brokerage statements going back decades, dividend checks, annual reports from companies she'd never heard me mention. Your mother knew, I said softly. We planned this together. Every investment, every decision, every sacrifice. We wanted to build something that would ensure you never had to worry about money the way we did when we were young. Emma sank into the small chair in the corner, the same chair where she'd done homework while I worked in the evenings, where she'd complained about school and boys and all the dramas of growing up. Now she sat there looking like someone who'd just discovered that gravity worked backwards. How much? She asked finally. I pulled up a summary screen showing the total value across all accounts. The number was substantial, more than substantial. It was the kind of number that changed everything about how you looked at the future, about what was possible, about what security really meant. Emma stared at the screen for a long time, not speaking. I could see her mind working, recalculating everything she thought she knew, reassessing every judgment she'd made, every criticism she'd voiced, every moment of shame she'd felt about the man sitting next to her. I don't understand why you live this way, she said finally. If you have this much, why not enjoy it? Why not buy nice things, travel, live in a better house? Because money is a tool, not a toy, I replied. Because the goal was never to spend it, but to build it. Because your mother and I wanted you to have choices, real choices, not just the illusion of wealth that comes from spending everything you earn. I walked to the window, looking out at the same backyard where Emma had played as a child, where Sarah and I had dreamed about our daughter's future during those quiet evening conversations. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass. I still cut myself every Saturday, not because I couldn't afford a landscaping service, but because some habits die hard. Your mother made me promise something before she died, I said, not turning around. She made me promise that I wouldn't let money change who we were, but that I also wouldn't let the lack of it limit who you could become. Emma was still staring at the computer screen, scrolling through years of investment history like she was reading someone else's life story. Dad, this is insane. You're sitting on a fortune and you're still using coupons at the grocery store. Those coupons saved us $12 last week, I said, finally facing her again. $12 that went into the same Vanguard index fund that's now worth more than most people make in 5 years. Every small decision compounds, Emma. Every sacrifice builds on the last one. She shook her head, overwhelmed. But what's the point of having money if you never use it? What's the point of being wealthy if nobody knows it? The point is freedom, I said simply. Real freedom. Not the kind that comes from a credit card or a loan officer's approval. The freedom to make choices based on what's right, not what you can afford. The freedom to help people without expecting anything back. The freedom to say no to things that don't matter and yes to things that do. I opened another filing cabinet and pulled out a different folder, this one labeled with Emma's name in my careful handwriting. Inside were documents she'd never seen before, college savings accounts that had grown far beyond what we'd needed for her tuition, investment accounts opened in her name when she was born, trust funds that would mature on her 25th birthday, just 4 months away. This is yours, I said, placing the folder on the desk. It always has been. Every dollar I didn't spend on a new car, every vacation we didn't take, every restaurant meal we skipped, it all went here, into your future. Emma opened the folder with shaking hands. Her name was on everything. Account statements showing steady growth over 24 years. Stock certificates purchased in her name when she was too young to understand what they meant. A financial foundation that would allow her to do anything, be anything, go anywhere. I don't deserve this, she whispered, tears starting to form in her eyes. Not after what I said. Not after how I've treated you. You're my daughter, I said, sitting down across from her. You don't have to deserve love. You don't have to earn being cared for. And you certainly don't have to apologize for being young and not understanding things that took me decades to learn. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the little girl who used to climb into my lap when she was scared, who used to ask me to read her the same bedtime story every night for 3 years straight, who used to believe her dad could fix anything that was broken. But I called you useless, she said, her voice cracking. I said terrible things. I was ashamed of you. You were ashamed of what you thought you saw, I corrected gently. You were judging a book by its cover, which is something most people do their entire lives. The difference is, most people never get the chance to read the inside pages. I pulled out one more document, this one recent, printed just that morning before Emma had walked into the kitchen with her speech about moving out. It was a stock purchase confirmation, Tesla shares, bought 3 days earlier when the stock had dipped on some analyst's negative report. I bought these after watching you use that car-sharing app last week, I explained. You mentioned how convenient it was, how the technology was improving, how more of your friends were giving up their cars for services like that. So I researched the company, looked at their financials, read their annual reports, and decided it was a good long-term investment. Emma stared at the document. You bought stock based on something I said? I've been watching you your whole life, Emma. Watching what you like, what you use, what excites you. Your generation sees trends before mine does. You understand technology in ways I never will. Some of my best investment decisions have come from paying attention to what young people are actually doing, not what the financial news says they should be doing. She was quiet for a long time, processing everything she'd learned in the past 20 minutes. The computer screen still glowed with numbers that represented decades of patience, discipline, and faith in the future. Her future? The apartment, she said finally. The roommates, I already signed a lease. And you should honor it, I said. Moving out is the right thing to do. You're 24 years old. You need to build your own life, make your own mistakes, discover who you are when you're not living in your father's house. But now I don't need to worry about the money. I could afford a place by myself. I could travel. I could do anything. I leaned back in my chair, the same cheap office chair I'd bought 15 years ago when Emma complained that my old one squeaked too much when she was trying to study. You could do anything, but what should you do? That's the real question wealth asks you. Not what can you afford, but what will make you the person you want to become. Emma closed the folder carefully, handling it like it contained something precious and fragile, which, in a way, it did. It contained possibilities. It contained the freedom to choose based on values instead of limitations. It contained the security that comes from knowing you have options, even when you choose not to use them. Why didn't you tell me before? She asked. Why let me think we were struggling? Why let me be embarrassed? Because I wanted you to understand the value of things before you understood the cost of things, I said. I wanted you to work for what you wanted, to appreciate what you had, to understand that happiness doesn't come from what you own but from who you are and what you contribute. I gestured around the modest office, taking in the cheap furniture and outdated equipment that had embarrassed her so much. This room has generated more wealth than most people will ever see, not because of what's in it, but because of the decisions that were made here, the late nights spent researching companies, the careful analysis of market trends, the patience to hold investments for years when everyone else was buying and selling based on emotions. Emma stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the same view I'd been contemplating moments earlier. I feel like I don't know you at all, she said. Like I've been living with a stranger my entire life. You've been living with a father who loved you enough to sacrifice what other people would consider important, so that you could have what's actually important, I replied. The freedom to choose your own path without financial constraints limiting your options. She turned back to me, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. The girl who'd majored in marketing was starting to understand the long-term strategy behind decisions that had seemed small and meaningless at the time. The old car, she said slowly. The discount shopping. The home repairs you did yourself instead of hiring contractors. It was all intentional. Every dollar has a choice to make, I said. It can buy something now, or it can grow into something bigger later. Your mother and I chose later. We chose your future over our present comfort. We chose building wealth over displaying wealth. Emma walked back to the desk and picked up the folder with her name on it. What happens now? What am I supposed to do with all this? Whatever you want, I said simply. That's the point. You can start your own business. You can travel the world. You can go back to school. You can invest it and continue building wealth. You can give it all away to charity. The choice is yours, and for the first time in your life, money won't be the factor that makes the decision for you. She sat back down, holding the folder against her chest like a shield. I owe you an apology, a big one. I said horrible things. You said things that a young person says when they don't understand the full picture, I corrected. You're not the first person to mistake frugality for poverty or mistake quiet wealth for failure. Most people make those same mistakes their entire lives. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small notebook, worn from years of use. Inside were handwritten records going back decades. Investment ideas, stock picks, dividend calculations, notes about companies I was watching. The real work behind the numbers on the computer screen. This is how it really works, I said, showing her pages covered with my careful handwriting. Not some get-rich-quick scheme or lucky gambling, just consistent research, patient investing, and the discipline to stick with a plan even when it's boring. Emma flipped through the notebook, seeing years of methodical work condensed into columns of numbers and brief observations. You've been doing this since I was born? Since before you were born, I said. Your mother and I started investing the year we got married. We made mistakes early on, lost money on bad picks, learned expensive lessons about timing and emotions, but we kept at it, kept learning, kept building. She stopped at a page near the back of the notebook, dated just 2 weeks earlier. My notes about the conversation we'd had about her job search, her frustration with the competitive market, her concerns about student loan payments. Below that, a list of companies in the education and career services sector that I'd been researching. You were going to invest in job placement companies because I was struggling to find work? She asked, incredulous. I was going to invest in trends I saw developing based on your generation's challenges, I said. The best investments come from understanding real problems that need real solutions. Your struggles aren't just your struggles. They're shared by millions of people your age. Smart money follows real needs. Emma closed the notebook and handed it back to me, but I waved it away. Keep it, I said. Study it. Learn from it. Add your own notes. The best gift I can give you isn't just money. It's the knowledge of how to grow it, protect it, and use it wisely. She clutched the notebook like it was a treasure map, which in many ways it was. Dad, I don't know what to say. Say you'll be careful, I replied. Say you'll remember that money is a tool, not a measure of your worth. Say you'll use it to build something meaningful, not just to buy things that make you feel important. The afternoon sun was setting now, casting the office in the golden light that photographers called the magic hour. Emma and I sat in comfortable silence, both of us processing the conversation that had changed everything between us. The apartment, she said eventually. I still want to move out. Not because I'm ashamed of you, but because you're right. I need to discover who I am when I'm not living off someone else's sacrifices. Good, I said, meaning it. But maybe now you can choose roommates based on compatibility instead of just splitting the rent 3 ways. Maybe you can take a job because it interests you, not just because it pays the bills. She smiled for the first time since walking into the kitchen that morning. Maybe I can stop being ashamed of my father and start being proud of the man who raised me. The words hit me harder than her earlier criticism had. Pride. After years of feeling like a disappointment, like someone whose choices were embarrassing and whose life was small, I was finally seeing myself through my daughter's eyes, the way I'd always hoped she would see me. There's one more thing, I said, reaching for the computer keyboard. Something I've been working on that I think you should know about. I pulled up another browser window, this one showing a website Emma had never seen before. The header read, Millennial Money Mentors, with a simple, professional design that looked nothing like the flashy financial advice sites she probably followed on social media. What is this? She asked, leaning closer to the screen. A blog I started 18 months ago, I said, scrolling down through dozens of articles. Financial education for young adults, investment basics, how to build wealth on an entry-level salary, avoiding the debt traps that destroy most people's financial futures before they turn 30. Emma's eyes widened as she read the article titles. How to invest your first $1,000. Why your parents' money advice might be wrong. The real cost of lifestyle inflation. Building wealth while paying student loans. Dad, these have thousands of comments. Look at these view counts. This article has over 200,000 reads. I clicked on one of the more popular posts, watching Emma's face as she absorbed the engagement metrics. Comments from young people thanking the anonymous author for advice that had changed their financial trajectory. Success stories from readers who'd followed the investment strategies and seen real results. You wrote all of this? She asked, scrolling through months of detailed financial content. Every word, I confirmed, posted every Tuesday and Friday for the past year and a half. Sometimes I'd write about mistakes I'd made early in my investing career. Sometimes I'd break down why certain stocks were performing well or poorly. Sometimes I just explain basic concepts that schools should teach but don't. She clicked on a post titled, My Father's Financial Wisdom Nearly Ruined My Life, and started reading. I watched her expression change as she realized the article was written from the perspective of someone whose wealthy parents had given them everything, leaving them unprepared for real financial responsibility. This story, she said slowly, it's about people like Jessica and Madison, isn't it? The friends whose parents I was comparing you to. I've seen it happen dozens of times, I said. Parents who think providing everything means never teaching anything. Kids who graduate college with no understanding of money because they've never had to make real financial decisions. They look successful on social media, but they're drowning in debt their parents co-signed for. Emma kept reading, absorbing article after article written by her father under a pen name she'd never heard. Financial advice that had helped thousands of young people avoid the mistakes she'd almost made herself. The comments, she said, pointing to the screen. These people love you. They're calling you brilliant. They're saying this advice changed their lives. Money management isn't complicated, I said, but it's counterintuitive. Everything that feels right in the moment is usually wrong for the long term. Everything that feels like deprivation is usually building toward abundance. Most people never learn the difference. She clicked on another article, this one about the psychology of spending versus investing. The comment section was filled with stories from readers who'd started small investment accounts, who'd learned to distinguish between needs and wants, who'd begun building the kind of wealth that would give them real choices later in life. You're famous, she said, staring at the subscriber count. 93,000 people follow this blog. You have more readers than most professional financial advisors. I have more credibility than most professional financial advisors, I corrected, because I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. I'm not managing other people's money for fees. I'm just sharing what I've learned from 37 years of actually building wealth instead of just talking about it. Emma was quiet for several minutes, reading through articles that revealed a side of her father she'd never imagined existed. The man she'd called useless that morning had been secretly helping thousands of people build financial security while she'd been sleeping late and complaining about her job prospects. The writing, she said finally. It's really good, Dad. Like, professionally good? You explain complex concepts in ways that make sense. You tell stories that make people care about compound interest and index funds. Your mother always said I should have been a teacher, I replied. She used to joke that I could make watching paint dry sound fascinating if I believed it was important enough. Why didn't you tell me about this either? Emma asked, gesturing at the screen full of financial wisdom her father had been sharing with strangers while she lived in the same house, completely unaware of his expertise. Because you weren't ready to listen, I said honestly. You were busy being embarrassed by my frugality. You thought my financial choices were signs of failure, not success. Would you have taken investment advice from someone you considered a loser? She winced at the reminder of her earlier words. Probably not. Exactly. Sometimes wisdom has to be earned, not given. Sometimes people have to discover value for themselves before they can recognize it in others. I clicked on the blog's About page, revealing a photo I'd taken in the same office chair, though carefully cropped to show only my hands holding a book about investing. The bio was simple. A lifelong investor sharing practical wisdom about building wealth slowly and surely. No get-rich-quick schemes, no day trading tips, just proven strategies for people who want financial freedom more than financial flash. 93,000 people trust your financial advice, Emma said, shaking her head in disbelief. 93,000 people think you're an expert worth following, and I thought you were useless. You thought I was ordinary, I corrected. There's a difference. Ordinary can be extraordinarily effective when it's applied consistently over time. Flashy usually burns out fast. She scrolled down to the comments on the most recent post, reading responses from people who'd started emergency funds, opened retirement accounts, bought their first index fund shares. Young professionals thanking the anonymous author for helping them avoid financial mistakes their peers were making. Listen to this one, Emma said, reading aloud. Dear MMM, I'm 26 and just started following your advice 6 months ago. I've already saved more money than I saved in the previous 3 years combined. My friends think I'm crazy for living below my means, but I can already see the difference it's making. Thank you for showing me that being smart with money doesn't mean being cheap, it means being strategic. She looked up at me. That could have been me writing that comment, if I'd been smart enough to listen to you instead of judging you. It still can be you, I said. The principles don't change just because you found out about them later than you could have. Emma clicked on another article, this one titled, "The Millionaire Next Door Isn't Who You Think." As she read, I watched her connect the dots between the blog's message and the man sitting next to her. "This article," she said slowly, "you're writing about yourself, aren't you? The millionaire next door who drives an old car and clips coupons and gets judged by people who don't understand that wealth and spending are different things." "I'm writing about a mindset," I said, "a way of thinking about money that most people never develop because they're too busy trying to look successful to actually become successful." She scrolled through the blog's archive, seeing 18 months of consistent posting, thousands of comments from grateful readers, guest posts from other successful investors who'd started following the blog, a complete financial education resource that her father had been building while she'd been living in his house, completely oblivious to his expertise. "The revenue," she said, clicking on a page that showed advertising partnerships and affiliate relationships. "Dad, you're making money from this blog too." "About $8,000 a month," I said casually, "enough to cover all my living expenses without touching any investment accounts. The blog pays for itself and then some." Emma's jaw dropped. $8,000 a month? From writing about investing? "From helping people solve real problems," I corrected. "The money follows the value. When you consistently provide something people need, they find ways to support what you're doing." She stared at the screen, calculating numbers in her head. "That's almost $100,000 a year just from the blog. Just from sharing knowledge I'd accumulated anyway," I said. Knowledge that was sitting in my head doing nothing until I decided to write it down and help other people benefit from what I'd learned. Emma leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed by the third major revelation of the afternoon. Her father wasn't just secretly wealthy. He wasn't just a successful long-term investor. He was also a successful entrepreneur who'd built a profitable business around financial education. "I don't understand how I missed all of this," she said quietly. "I lived in the same house. I saw you working on the computer every evening. I just assumed you were playing solitaire or reading news websites." "You saw what you expected to see," I said. "Most people do. They look at external appearances and make assumptions about what's really happening underneath." I opened another folder on the computer, this one containing correspondence with financial media outlets, interview requests from podcasts, invitations to speak at investment conferences, offers from publishers interested in turning the blog into a book. "Dad, Bloomberg wants to interview you. The Wall Street Journal has been trying to contact you. You're being invited to speak at investment conferences." "And I've turned them all down," I said, "because the moment I become a public figure, the message changes. Instead of being a regular person sharing practical wisdom, I become a brand trying to maintain an image. The authenticity gets lost in the marketing." Emma scrolled through dozens of similar requests, all politely declined. "You could be famous. You could be making a lot more money. Why stay anonymous?" "Because the goal was never fame or maximum profit," I said. "The goal was helping people while building something sustainable. The blog serves its purpose perfectly as it is. Adding complexity would just create problems without solving any." She looked at me with something approaching awe. "You've been living a completely different life than the one I thought you were living. You're not just financially successful, you're actually making a difference in people's lives." "I'm doing what I've always done," I said, "taking care of the people I care about. The only difference is that now the circle includes people I've never met, but who need the same guidance you needed, whether you knew it or not." Emma stood up and walked around the small office, seeing it with completely different eyes. The cheap furniture wasn't a sign of failure. It was evidence of someone who understood the difference between essential and impressive. The outdated equipment wasn't embarrassing. It was functional and paid for, requiring no monthly payments or upgrade cycles. "This whole room," she said, gesturing around the space that had embarrassed her that morning. "It's not a sign that you've given up. It's proof that you understand what actually matters." "Wealth isn't about what you display," I said. "It's about what you own free and clear, what generates income without requiring your constant attention, what gives you choices when other people are trapped by their expenses." She sat back down and pulled up another article, this one about the psychology of lifestyle inflation. As she read, I could see her recognizing herself in the examples, understanding how easily she could have fallen into the same traps that destroyed most young adults' financial futures. "The apartment I signed a lease for," she said slowly, "it's exactly the kind of place you warn against in this article. expensive enough to prevent saving, impressive enough to make me feel successful, but not actually building any equity or long-term value. It's not a mistake if you learn from it, I said, and now you can afford to make that choice consciously, understanding the trade-offs, instead of being forced into it by financial limitations. Emma closed the browser and turned to face me directly. Dad, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect. I owe you recognition for everything you've accomplished while I was too blind to see it. You don't owe me anything, I said, but you owe yourself the chance to build on what you've learned today. You have advantages now that most people never get. Knowledge, resources, and time to let compound interest work in your favor. The question is what you'll do with those advantages. She picked up the notebook I'd given her earlier, flipping through pages of investment wisdom accumulated over decades. I want to learn everything. I want to understand how you did all this. I want to become the kind of person who builds wealth instead of just spending it. Then we'll start tomorrow, I said, not with the money, but with the mindset. Money without wisdom is just a bigger way to make the same mistakes. Wisdom without money is just potential waiting for resources. You're about to have both. The office felt different now, charged with possibility instead of embarrassment. Emma was looking at her father not as a failure to be pitied, but as a mentor worth learning from. The transformation wasn't just in what she knew about my financial situation, it was in how she saw the choices that had created that situation. There's one more thing I need to tell you, I said, reaching for my phone. Something I've been planning since your mother died. Something that will complete the picture of what we've been building for your future. Emma watched as I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a name she didn't recognize. Sarah Mitchell, estate planning attorney. The final piece of a plan that had taken 8 years to fully implement. A plan that would ensure everything Sarah and I had built would transfer to Emma in the most advantageous way possible. Dad, what else could there possibly be? She asked, exhaustion creeping into her voice from the emotional whiplash of discovering that everything she'd believed about her father was wrong. The foundation, I said simply, placing the call. The charitable foundation your mother and I established in your name, funded by a portion of our investments, designed to let you make a real impact on causes you care about while teaching you how wealth can serve purposes larger than personal comfort. As the phone rang, I watched Emma's face cycle through surprise, confusion, and the dawning realization that the revelations weren't over, that the man she'd called useless that morning had been planning not just for her financial security, but for her opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the world. The conversation that had started with her calling me a failure was about to end with her understanding that failure and success often looked exactly opposite of what people expected, and that the most profound success often came disguised as ordinary, unremarkable, everyday choices that accumulated into extraordinary results over time. Sarah, it's Robert. Yes, I think it's time to have that conversation with Emma about the foundation. Can you meet with us next week? As I hung up the phone, Emma stared at me with a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. A foundation? Dad, how many more surprises are you going to drop on me today? I leaned back in my chair, watching the last rays of sunlight fade from the office window. Just this one, I promise. But it's important. It's the reason your mother and I did all of this in the first place. Emma rubbed her temples, processing everything she'd learned in the past few hours. I can't handle much more. My brain feels like it's going to explode. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation for Educational Opportunity, I said quietly, named after your mother, established 3 years ago with an initial funding of $2 million, designed to provide college scholarships for students whose parents work in service industries, kids whose families sacrifice everything to give them chances they never had themselves. Her hands dropped from her temples. $2 million? Growing to approximately $2.7 million as of last month, thanks to careful investment of the principal. I opened another browser tab showing her the foundation's website. Professional, understated, focused entirely on the students it served rather than the donors who funded it. Emma scrolled through scholarship recipient profiles, young faces, bright smiles, stories of overcoming obstacles that money alone couldn't solve, but that financial support could make manageable. Maria Santos, daughter of restaurant workers studying biochemistry at Washington State. James Chen, son of hotel housekeepers, pursuing mechanical engineering at University of Washington. Ashley Thompson, raised by a single mother who cleaned offices, now in her 3rd year of medical school. These kids, Emma whispered, reading story after story, They're all first-generation college students. Like your mother was, I said, like I was. We understood what it meant to have parents who worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table, who dreamed of their children having opportunities they'd never had but didn't know how to make those dreams reality. Emma clicked on a video testimonial from a recent graduate, a young woman who'd received foundation support through nursing school and was now working at Seattle Children's Hospital. I couldn't have done this without the Sarah Mitchell Foundation, she was saying. Not just the money, though, that was crucial, but knowing that someone believed in me, someone who understood what my family had sacrificed. That gave me strength when I wanted to quit. Dad, this is incredible. These students, their achievements, the impact you're making. Emma's voice carried wonder now, instead of criticism. How many scholarships do you provide each year? 32 full scholarships currently active, with 8 new recipients selected each year. We cover full tuition, books, and living expenses for 4 years, plus mentorship and internship placement assistance. I pulled up the Foundation's annual report, showing detailed financial statements and outcome tracking. 96% graduation rate among our recipients, compared to 62% average for first-generation college students nationally. Emma studied the numbers, her marketing background kicking in as she analyzed the data. These results are extraordinary. Dad, you're not just giving money away. You're changing entire family trajectories. That was always the plan, I said. Your mother grew up in a family where college wasn't even discussed as a possibility. Her parents loved her, worked hard, wanted the best for her, but they simply didn't have the knowledge or resources to help her navigate higher education. She had to figure it all out herself. I clicked through photos from the Foundation's annual scholarship dinner, images of students with their families, parents who'd worked in kitchens and laundries and warehouses beaming with pride as their children received recognition for academic achievement. These parents understand sacrifice. They understand working multiple jobs, skipping meals so their kids can eat, wearing the same clothes for years while making sure their children have what they need for school. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she watched a video of Maria Santos introducing her parents at graduation, thanking them in Spanish before switching to English to describe how her biochemistry degree would allow her to develop treatments for diseases that disproportionately affected working-class communities like the one she'd grown up in. She's going to change the world, Emma said, wiping her eyes. They all are, I replied. That's what happens when you give genuinely motivated people the resources they need to develop their potential. They don't just improve their own lives, they lift up everyone around them. Emma scrolled through more recipient profiles, noting patterns in their stories. They all talk about giving back. Every single one mentions plans to help their communities, to support other students, to use their education in service of something larger than personal success. People who've experienced real need understand the responsibility that comes with real opportunity, I said. They don't take it for granted because they know how easily it could have gone differently. She clicked on another section of the website, this one showing the Foundation's selection criteria: academic potential, financial need, demonstrated leadership, community service, and essays about how they plan to use their education to make a positive impact. These aren't just academic scholarships. You're selecting for character. Academic ability without character is just credential accumulation, I said. We're looking for students who will use their education to solve problems, not just to advance their own careers. Emma found the Foundation's Board of Directors page, recognizing several names from the local business community. These are serious people, Dad. The kind of community leaders I see quoted in the newspaper. Your mother and I learned early that if you want to make real change, you need to surround yourself with people who understand both vision and execution. Every board member has experience either in education or in building organizations that serve others. She clicked on a section titled Founder's Message and began reading aloud. The Sarah Mitchell Foundation exists because 2 working-class parents understood that education is the most powerful tool for breaking cycles of economic limitation. Our goal is not charity, but investment in human potential that will generate returns for entire communities across generations. You wrote this, she said, looking at me with new recognition. This isn't just philanthropy for you, this is personal. Every scholarship recipient represents a path your mother and I could have taken if someone had believed in us the way we believe in them, I said. Every graduation is a victory for every parent who ever worked 2 jobs to keep their kids in school. Every career success is proof that potential exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. Emma spent several minutes reading through detailed case studies of scholarship recipients, following their progress from application through graduation and into their professional lives. Ashley Thompson, the one whose mother cleaned offices, she's in medical school now. Pediatric surgery track, I confirmed, planning to specialize in treating birth defects that require complex reconstructive procedures. She wants to work in public hospitals serving low-income families. And James Chen, the mechanical engineering student, graduated last spring, already holds 3 patents for manufacturing efficiency improvements, started his own company designing equipment that reduces workplace injuries in factories and warehouses. Emma looked up from the screen. Dad, these aren't just success stories. These are people who are going to impact thousands of lives because you and Mom gave them a chance. Because we understood what they needed and had the resources to provide it, I corrected. The success is theirs. We just removed some obstacles that shouldn't have been there in the first place. She clicked on the Foundation's financial transparency section, studying annual budgets and expense ratios. Administrative costs are only 3%. 97% of every dollar goes directly to student support. Your mother insisted on that structure, I said. She'd seen too many charitable organizations where most donations went to fundraising and overhead instead of actual service. We keep costs minimal by doing most of the administrative work ourselves and relying on volunteers for non-essential functions. Emma scrolled through volunteer profiles, recognizing several faces from the community. Mrs. Patterson from the library is on your volunteer team? She helps with application review and student mentoring. Turns out librarians are excellent at identifying genuine academic potential and connecting students with resources they need. I smiled, remembering Sarah's excitement when Mrs. Patterson had agreed to join the Foundation's support team. Your mother always said librarians understood the power of knowledge better than anyone. And Dr. Reeves from the community college serves as our educational consultant and helps with scholarship recipient placement. He's particularly good at matching students with programs that align with their career goals and learning styles. Emma continued reading, discovering that the Foundation's impact extended beyond individual scholarships. You fund teacher training programs too? Professional development for educators who work in high-poverty schools, I explained. We learned that supporting teachers improves outcomes for hundreds of students, not just the ones who receive direct scholarships. It's about strengthening the entire educational ecosystem. She found a section documenting teacher training outcomes, showing improved graduation rates and college placement statistics for schools where Foundation-supported educators worked. This is systematic change, Dad. You're not just helping individual students. You're improving education quality for entire communities. That was the evolution of our thinking, I said. We started with individual scholarships, but we realized that sustainable change required addressing systemic issues too. Better trained teachers, improved resources, stronger connections between schools and community support systems. Emma clicked on a photo gallery from recent teacher training workshops, seeing educators from across the region learning new strategies for helping first-generation college prospects navigate academic and financial aid processes. These teachers look genuinely excited, like they're learning things that will make a real difference in their classrooms. Because they are, I said. Most teachers go into education because they want to help kids succeed, but they often lack specific knowledge about college preparation for students whose families haven't been through the process. Our workshops fill those gaps. She scrolled through testimonials from participating teachers, reading stories about students who'd been encouraged to apply for colleges they'd never considered, who'd received help with financial aid applications, who'd been connected with mentors and resources that opened doors they didn't even know existed. Listen to this one, Emma said, reading from the screen. Before the Foundation's workshop, I had students with real potential who assumed college wasn't for them because their families couldn't afford it. Now I know how to help them find scholarships, navigate application processes, and understand that financial limitations don't have to mean educational limitations. 3 of my students from last year are now freshmen at 4-year universities. Multiply that across 47 teachers who've participated in our workshops over the past 2 years, I said. Each teacher impacts roughly 150 students per year. The ripple effects become significant. Emma found another section documenting partnerships with local businesses that provided internships and mentorship for scholarship recipients. You've created an entire support network. We learned that money alone wasn't enough, I said. These students needed professional connections, real-world experience, and guidance from people who understood both their backgrounds and their aspirations. The business partnerships provide that bridge between education and career success. She clicked through profiles of participating employers, recognizing names from construction, healthcare, technology, and manufacturing companies throughout the region. These are substantial companies, Dad. They're not just offering token internships. These look like real professional development opportunities. Because they are, I confirmed. We only partner with employers who commit to genuine mentorship and potential career pathways. The students earn these positions through merit, but the foundation helps create access to opportunities that might otherwise be invisible to them. Emma spent several minutes reading success stories from the internship program, noting how many participants had received job offers from their placement companies or had been recommended for positions at other firms within the business network. Maria Santos did her internship at the Regional Medical Center, and they offered her a research assistant position while she completes her graduate studies, which allows her to gain professional experience while earning money to support herself through her master's program, I said. She'll graduate with both advanced education and practical skills that make her immediately valuable to employers. Emma looked up from the screen, her expression thoughtful. Dad, this isn't just charity. This is investment in human capital that generates returns for the entire regional economy. Exactly, I said, pleased that she understood the broader implications. Every scholarship recipient who stays in the area after graduation contributes to local economic development. Every teacher we train improves educational outcomes for hundreds of students. Every business partnership creates connections that benefit both students and employers. She clicked on an economic impact analysis the foundation had commissioned, showing projected returns on educational investment over 10 and 20-year periods. These numbers are impressive, Dad. For every dollar the foundation spends on scholarships and teacher training, the regional economy gains approximately $4 in increased productivity, reduced social services costs, and tax revenue from higher-earning workers. Your mother would have loved seeing that analysis, I said. She always argued that education was the best possible investment, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. This data proves she was right. Emma scrolled through the foundation's strategic plan, noting expansion goals and sustainability projections. You're planning to double scholarship awards over the next 5 years? If investment returns continue performing as projected, yes, I said. The foundation is structured to grow over time, increasing its impact while maintaining financial stability. Eventually, it should be able to sustain itself through investment income alone, independent of additional donations. She found a section detailing the foundation's endowment strategy, recognizing investment principles similar to what she'd learned about my personal portfolio management. You're applying the same long-term thinking to the foundation that you used to build wealth for our family. Same principles, different purpose, I confirmed. Patient capital accumulation, diversified risk management, focus on sustainable growth rather than short-term returns. The foundation benefits from decades of investment experience applied to philanthropic goals. Emma closed the laptop and sat quietly for several minutes, processing everything she'd learned about her father's secret life as an investor, educator, and philanthropist. The man she'd called useless that morning had been quietly changing lives while she'd been complaining about his outdated furniture and secondhand clothes. I don't know who you are, she said finally. I mean, I thought I knew you my entire life, but I didn't know you at all. You knew the parts of me that were visible, I said. The father who made breakfast every morning, who helped with homework, who drove you to soccer practice and band concerts. That person was real too. But there was this whole other dimension I never saw. The investor, the writer, the philanthropist. How did you keep it all separate? I didn't keep it separate, I said. It was all connected. Everything I did was motivated by the same goal, building security and opportunity for the people I cared about. You just happened to be the person I cared about most. Emma walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood she'd been embarrassed to live in that morning. This house, this street, these neighbors. You chose this intentionally, didn't you? Not because you couldn't afford better, but because this was enough. This house gave us everything we needed and asked for nothing we couldn't afford, I said. It allowed us to invest the difference between what we could have spent and what we actually spent. That difference became your education fund, the foundation, the blog, everything else we built. She turned back to me, and I've been judging you for choosing substance over appearance. You've been 24 years old, I said gently. At 24, appearances matter because you're still figuring out who you are and how you fit in the world. It's natural to want external validation, to measure success by what other people can see. But you and Mom figured out that real success was invisible. We figured out that the most important achievements happen quietly, over long periods of time, in ways that don't generate immediate recognition, I said. Compound interest, knowledge accumulation, relationship building, character development. The things that actually matter are usually the things that don't show up in photographs. Emma sat back down, picking up the notebook I'd given her earlier. What happens now? How do I go from being the person who called her father useless to being someone worthy of all this trust and responsibility? The same way anyone builds anything worthwhile, I said, one decision at a time, one day at a time, with patience and consistency and faith that small choices accumulate into significant outcomes. She opened the notebook, flipping through pages of investment wisdom and financial philosophy. Will you teach me? Not just about money, but about all of it. The blog, the foundation, the way you think about building things that last. I'll teach you everything I know, I said. But more importantly, I'll teach you how to keep learning after I'm gone. The principles matter more than the specific strategies because principles adapt to changing circumstances while strategies become obsolete. Emma looked around the office one more time, seeing it now as the command center of a quietly influential life, rather than evidence of a man who'd given up on success. Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Always. Are you disappointed in me? For how I judged you, for how long it took me to understand what you were really doing, for being so focused on appearances that I missed the substance? I considered the question carefully, looking at this young woman who'd spent the afternoon discovering that everything she'd believed about success and failure was backwards. Emma, you're 24 years old. You're supposed to make mistakes in judgment. You're supposed to question everything, including your parents' choices. That's how you develop your own values and priorities. But I was so wrong about everything. You were wrong about some things and right about others, I said. You were right that I could have lived more comfortably. You were right that I chose frugality over luxury. You were right that my lifestyle looked different from your friends' fathers. You were just wrong about what those choices meant. Emma smiled for the first time since the morning's confrontation. I was right about the facts, but wrong about the interpretation. Exactly. And now you have better information to make better interpretations. That's not failure. That's learning. She stood up and walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders in the first genuine hug we'd shared in months. I love you, Dad, and I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what I was looking at. I love you too, sweetheart, I said, hugging her back. And I'm proud of you for being willing to change your mind when you got new information. That's the most important skill anyone can have. As we separated, Emma picked up the folder containing her financial inheritance, holding it carefully. This changes everything, doesn't it? Not just the money, but understanding what it represents, what you and Mom built together, what you're trusting me to continue. It changes everything and nothing, I said. You're still the same person with the same potential you had this morning. Now you just have resources that match your capabilities and responsibilities that match your advantages. Emma opened the folder one more time, looking at account statements and investment documents that represented decades of patient wealth building. I want to be worthy of this trust. I want to honor what you and Mom created. Then start tomorrow, I said. Move into that apartment you leased. Learn to live independently, make your own mistakes and your own successes. Use the blog and the foundation as learning laboratories for understanding how wealth can serve purposes larger than personal comfort. And remember that the goal was never to make you rich. It was to make you free. As the evening darkness settled over the neighborhood I'd chosen for its character rather than its prestige, Emma and I sat together in comfortable silence, both of us understanding that something fundamental had changed between us, not just in what she knew about my life, but in how she saw the relationship between appearances and reality, between immediate gratification and long-term satisfaction, between looking successful and actually being successful. The daughter who'd called me useless that morning was leaving as a young woman who understood that true success often wore the disguise of ordinary choices made consistently over time. And I was discovering that the greatest return on any investment wasn't financial. It was watching someone you love learn to see the world clearly enough to build something meaningful within it. The lesson was complete, but the real education was just beginning. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.